Hades is a game with a lot of gods in it. In fact, the entire concept of the game seems to be entirely based around these semi-omnipotent beings, and as someone who enjoys playing Hades from time to time, I'm legally required to express my opinion on it. Not by the laws of any recognizable government or anything like that, but by the laws of physics that require every single random person on the internet to express their opinion on whatever topic said rando dwells in. With that being said, let's get into what I consider to be the top 10 most useful gods in all of Hades. And, by the way, there are only 10 gods that give you power-ups in Hades, so we're ranking all of them. I should have called this ranking every Hades god, but here we are. I do want to emphasize real quick that every single god in Hades is good and can be even better depending on the situation. One of the best parts of Hades is the fact that you get to build your own personal run every time you play the game, and all the choices are up to you. On top of that, the developers clearly put a lot of time into making sure each and every god is useful and unique in their own ways. I'm bringing this up because I know for a fact people are going to disagree with some of my picks and comment about how I have no idea what I'm talking about and should delete my YouTube channel, but this list is based on what I consider to be objective usefulness. And by that I mean I'm ranking these gods based on usefulness on their own without taking any specific builds or situations that might significantly complement one god over another into account. I might bring up those builds and situations during the video from time to time just to show them off, but the ranking order completely disregards specific builds and situations where certain gods would be much better. Anyway, hopefully that deters some of the angry commenters, but I'm sure they'll show it regardless, so let's take a look at number 10. Number 10 is the homie Demeter, and I'm sure there are a couple of you guys who have played Hades before once or twice and are wondering who the heck this lady even is. Well, I don't think Demeter shows up in the game until you've successfully made it to the surface for the first time, but despite being the only god with the prerequisite to unlock, the boons are pretty lackluster. Her cast upgrade is honestly pretty decent, and her main power-up gimmick thing is the harsh cold of winter that slows down enemies when affected, but if you're asking me, this doesn't have a lot of practical advantage. Like I said before, there are definitely builds you can center around these upgrades to get something really decent, and one of her boons actually upgrades the rarity of your other boons, which of course can be amazing, but whenever I see a door with a boon on it, I'm the most disappointed when it's Demeter. But she is cool though, I can't lie. Number 9 is the homie Lord Uncle Poseidon, and if there is going to be any angry comments under this video, I'm blaming this pick as the source. Poseidon is one of the fan favorites just because he's kind of funny, and a lot of his boons are actually really good, with the most notable one being his dash upgrade, which I believe is the best one in the game in terms of attacking power. But this aside, I really don't think Poseidon has too many things to offer that you can't get better from someone else. His main power up is knockback, which again, I don't think is super useful practically, but of course there are tons of builds you can center around this that are amazing, especially if you're a speedrunner. He also has upgrades for some of the rewards you pick up in the chambers to make them more potent, and he can even give you a supply drop with a random assortment of said power-ups as well. Obviously that's nice of Mr. Poseidon, but like, there are just better upgrades out there. Number 8 is the goddess of love Aphrodite, which is kind of ironic considering I love it when I get any other god boon. Obviously I'm joking since we just established she's at least better than Poseidon and Demeter, but honestly between you and me, this is the part of the list I had the most trouble with. Aphrodite is actually really useful, so it was extremely difficult ranking the next few gods. As far as I'm aware, the damage modifiers of her boons are actually the highest in the game, meaning if you just ignore the power-ups each god gives you, Aphrodite straight up just has the best upgrades, in terms of the increased damage percentages. But on top of that, her power is inflicting weakness on your enemies, which causes them to do less damage to you. This is obviously not only useful for beginners, but also boss fights for obvious reasons. On top of that, Aphrodite also has an upgrade that increases the total amount of extra life you gain from heart power-ups, which is always welcome into my builds. But maybe it's just because I overvalue health from playing Mega Man X too much and collecting all of those heart upgrades, and like these heart upgrades are the same. I don't know. I don't know the psychology for that, but I like those things either way, so anyway. I've also personally had builds where I go all in on Aphrodite and try to get every single boon I can from her, and it ends up wreaking havoc on every single enemy that is not a boss. On a side note, why is the goddess of love, who's notorious for being the most beautiful living being to ever exist, in possession of the ugliest face in the entire game? I mean, of course, she's not wearing clothes, sure, but like, why does her face look like that? The only character in the entire game who may be uglier than Aphrodite is Tisiphone, but looking at this side-by-side comparison, I don't know, man. Aphrodite might take the cake as the ugliest goddess, which is just absurd. Hermes probably has some of the most unique upgrades you can get from any god. Instead of having upgrades that buff your attack, special, and cast like everyone else, all of Hermes' upgrades are standalone buffs that will not get in the way of other gods' upgrades, which means objectively Hermes can never be bad to see. Of course, with Hermes being known as the swift and fast messenger god, most of his upgrades are going to be based around speed, with the most basic upgrades increasing the speed of your attack, special, or cast. But the best upgrade from Hermes, if you're asking me, are Greatest Reflex and Side Hustle. Greatest Reflex adds more dashes to your total number of dashes, which may not seem like a lot, but it ends up being extremely useful. You can have up to 2 dashes in your base form as Zagreus, but with the best rarity, Hermes can increase your total dashes to 6, which makes the game infinitely easier, since, you can just spam the dash button over and over again for the whole game and never get hit, not even once. You will not get hit a single time. Side Hustle is also very useful because it just straight up gives you a certain amount of gold per chamber. The default common rarity is 10 gold per chamber, with the most rare giving you 19 gold per chamber because 20 would be stupidly overpowered. Hermes also has a lot of other great upgrades, with the final honorable mention being Quick Favor, which automatically passively charges up your god gauge. Either way, it's safe to say that going for Hermes boons can never be a bad option, considering they're not only extremely useful, but at the same time they don't even overlap other upgrades the way that normal god upgrades would. Also, isn't it ironic that the god of swiftness has the longest and most detailed entry in the entire video? Or wait, I guess that's spoilers. Oops, my bad. Spoilers, guys. Oh, it's too late. Don't dislike. Oh, they got rid of the dislike button. I can spoil whatever I want now, you fools. Dionysus, spelled Dionysus, not only always gets voted out in Among Us, but is also one of my personal favorite gods in the game. His main special power is something called hangover damage, which is meant to be a joke about him being the god of partying, but it works exactly like poison damage, and it's even purple, so really it's 1-to-1. The poison effects aren't the strongest upgrades you can get in the game, which is why he's number 6, but they can still be really useful, especially if you're struggling to complete a run, since you're able to spend more time dodging while the poison does damage for you. The reason Dionysus is high up on this list though isn't because of the poisonous effects, but because of his other boon upgrades. There are a couple of pretty decent ones like Positive Outlook, which makes you take less damage when below 40% health, or the even better version being After Party, that will completely heal you anywhere up to between 30 to 60% of your total health after completing an encounter. Strong Drink is another great upgrade that makes fountains restore all of your health instead of just part of it, while also increasing your total damage every time you drink from a fountain. But my favorite boon of his is Premium Vintage, which low-key almost got this man the #1 spot in the video. This upgrade not only gives you a free nectar, which anyone who plays Hades will want, but it also increases your total health anytime you pick up nectar for the remainder of the run, which is honestly just one of the most useful power-ups in the entire game, especially if you're still early into the story. So if you're asking me, Dionysus ain't so sus after all, but I'm still voting him out, because I'm a troll. The first half of the list has been completed, which means I know some of you guys are using your big brains and process of elimination powers to figure out who the best gods really are. Well, stop. That's rude. I literally made this video just for you to watch. Why are you... Anyway, I've left the second half of the script at a friend's house, unfortunately, so I do gotta go get that before we continue. Number 5 is Ares, the god of war, who fittingly has really useful attacking upgrades. Ares' main power is doom damage, which so like you hit the bad guy and then a little sword shows up above them and then hits them again for a lot of damage, and that's doom damage. The damage that the little sword does, that damage is doom damage. This doesn't seem like anything special, but these upgrades can seriously add up and make a lot of the hardest bosses easier than a Mario Goomba. He also has an upgrade that straight up increases the amount of damage you do, which is obviously really good. It's always a good sign when you get an Ares upgrade on your run, but it just makes me wonder where this guy was the whole time I was playing Plants vs. Zombies. Chaos is the only god who is more unique than Hermes, and if we were ranking these gods by looks, Chaos would have the #1 spot, and Aphrodite would have the bottom. The upgrades Chaos gives you all come with some kind of downside that you have to deal with for a few chambers before receiving your reward, which isn't a new idea, as I'm pretty sure there was something exactly like that in the Binding of Isaac, but Chaos did it better, so why does it matter who did it first? The upgrades Chaos gives you can be extremely overpowered, and I've gotten things from plus 90 HP, plus 70% damage, to even straight up an extra life, which in Hades is probably the best thing in the entire game. The only reason Chaos isn't #1 is because you can't run into Chaos as often as the other gods, and also, when you get bad luck, sometimes you end up going through some terrible Chaos challenge only to get something stupid like an extra cast shot or something. But simply entering into a Chaos room actually counts as completing a chamber, so if you have 5 encounters left before a boss fight, going into a Chaos room actually counts so you only have 4 more left, which basically means Chaos is a free room on top of his amazing upgrades, so you'll never catch me dodging the homie Chaos, I can tell you that. Zeus is one of the best, if not the best god when it comes to damage upgrades. All of Zeus's upgrades are intricately engineered to do as much damage to as many enemies as possible. I think the Zeus keepsake was actually the first one that I got all the way up to 3 stars just because of how powerful his attack boon is with the gun weapon. On top of just having good attack damage upgrades, his greater call is also the best one in the game in my personal opinion, and most of Zeus's extra boons end up increasing your lightning effect's damage, or just some sort of overall effectiveness, which ends up making the already powerful Zeus upgrades even more powerful. There isn't much else to say about Zeus since he's actually kind of basic, but if you don't believe me about how good he is, feel free to do your own research on Hades builds involving Zeus's upgrades because it'll blow your mind. Oh wait, why didn't I say it'll shock you? What is the matter with me? The reason I didn't instantaneously claim that Zeus is the best attacking god is because of the existence of Artemis. Artemis's upgrades in terms of percent of damage increase to your attacks are actually kind of weak, with some of the lowest damage increases out of all the gods. But her special power is critical damage, which is insanely overpowered. For whatever reason, the way critical damage works in this game is very effective against bosses along with big health bar enemies, and the more attacks you have with the chance to do critical damage, the more total damage you will end up racking up. The concept of critical damage obviously isn't new, but trust me when I say this is probably the best god power in the entire game in terms of attacking. Artemis's cast is also my favorite cast upgrade in the game, since it not only adds critical damage chances, but also seeks enemies until it hits them. Artemis also has an upgrade that makes any damage you do have a chance to be critical, which is super nice, but of course it is a much lower chance than any of the other critical damage upgrades. But still, I always hunt down Artemis when going on a run. Do you get it, guys? Because she's the huntress god? Was that a funny joke? Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow my, donate money to my PayPal, please. I'm sure you've all solved it by now, but #1 is the goddess Athena. This may come as a slight shock to some people considering none of her boons are really that overpowered, nor do they do anything super significant, but I think Athena is objectively the most useful god because her upgrades make completing a run significantly easier. Her power is reflecting enemies' attacks / projectiles, and while you certainly can get her attack upgrades and try to smack all those projectiles yourself, I personally think her dash upgrade is honestly one of, if not the most useful upgrade in the entire game, since it basically makes you invincible while you dash. So imagine this mixed with that other Hermes thing. I know we said we're not talking about specific things, but just imagine that for a minute. Just pretend this isn't in the video and imagine it for yourself, okay? Pretend that's your own original thought. You can of course still get hit, but any projectiles that hit you will be deflected back, so unless you're dashing straight into an enemy, you probably aren't going to be taking any damage. You might not agree with me about this being enough to justify Athena being the #1 most useful god, but Hades is an extremely hard game, and my first several ones were completed only because I had the dash upgrade to carry me through certain sections. On top of that, she also has another extremely clutch power-up that restores one of your extra lives if you've lost one before getting the upgrade. Anytime the game gives you a chance to get an extra life or replenish one that you've lost, you should take a moment and thank the gods, because this is not a common occurrence. Again, you can certainly argue that some of these gods have more powerful upgrades than Athena, and that's probably true, but in terms of objectively being the most useful useful, I have to put Athena at number 1. Not only because of how useful her power-ups can be, but also because they make the game significantly easier for anyone to beat, and more so than any other god's power-ups, which is what I personally would consider to be useful. Also because Athena is the goddess of wisdom, so if I put her any lower than number 1, she'd probably figure out how to hack my YouTube channel and dox my address or get me canceled or just something horrible, so let's not find out. Well, those were the top 10 most useful gods in all of Hades. I hope you guys agree with all the picks, and if you didn't, then well, you're wrong, but regardless, I hope you guys all at least enjoyed the video, because at the end of the day, these videos are really more for entertainment purposes than advanced strategy or anything like that. And if you watch this video for entertainment and you've never played Hades before, please play it. It's a really fun game, I can't stress that enough. And one final message to all the people who clicked on this video and skipped to the number 1 spot without watching the video. Set my diamonds wetter, this is something ups. Hold up on my wrists, looking sunny. Hit 'em with the numbers like a nerd. Ain't let's slide, fall, I'm tired. Come on, fucking snotty, cause it's all they don't mind. I can be exhibit, my pimp, my ride. Wet, catch a feather, picking raps like cracks. My bitch like Bruno.